7th and 8th grade. It's Mr. Pettigo. Hope you guys are having a great start to the week. Today's Tuesday, and we're kind of jumping back in after Easter break, and we're going to be wrapping up this week our lecture series and readings on World War One. So today we're looking at pages 730 through 734, okay? And we're talking about how World War One ends. And I did another video on this earlier last week, but I think since we had this spring break, let's just do a refresher. Again, we're talking about pages 730 and 730 through 734. We're talking about armistice. Armistice, word of French origin, means to agree to stop fighting, essentially. And that's what happens. But why does that happen? And what are the events that lead up to that? Let's talk about this. I'm going to talk about alliances. And alliances and how alliances work really is the reason why World War One started. Kind of a domino effect with, alliances. And alliances are also how World War One ends. You recall that the central powers of World War One are, Germany, obviously, and Austria-Hungary. You recall that the Allied powers are Great Britain, France, Russia, and later on the United States of America. So I bring up these Central and Allied powers because there is a secret agreement made between one of the Central powers and one of the Allied powers. And this is between Germany and Russia. So what happens is Russia makes an alliance with Germany, and Russia ultimately drops out of the fight, World War One. How does that affect things? Well, Germany is situated right in between France and Russia. Both Russia and France were at one time Allied powers, and so that means Germany was fighting both Russia and France, from the east and the west. So with Russia out of the fight, with this secret alliance between them and Russia, they can focus all of their attention on France. So France right now is in kind of a predicament. They're in a dangerous spot. And what happens is France is aided by the United States of America, who comes into the war at this point. And that ultimately ends the war. France, United States, Great Britain, all fighting Germany, basically wears them down. And we see that reflected in the text. See, look at this. Talk about what was happening on the battlefield and also what's happening at home. 800 German civilians were dying of starvation a day. So that is why Germany eventually surrenders. But it's very important that we understand that this secret alliance between Germany and Russia happened, and that ultimately allows for them to focus on France and allows for the United States to aid France, ultimately ending the war, grinding them down. That's what happens. But it's interesting, over here it mentions this, terrible things going on in Germany. And that's important because that's actually happening. That's one of the reasons why France drops out of that's one of the reasons why Russia leaves the war, is because of the terrible conditions back home in Russia. They talk about also a revolution going on in Russia called the Bolshevik Revolution, and it mentions communism. So communism is a pretty dense subject to get into. But communism, long and short of it, is that it's an idea that there is no private industry or private property. Instead, the government is in control of industry and in control of property. Now, that might have been attractive to the Bolsheviks and to the folks in Russia who were experiencing starvation and experiencing a war that was really just taking a lot of Russian lives, to kind of if you're starving and you're poor and you don't have any money and things are awful, giving up some of your freedom in order to have a very powerful government take care of you, hopefully, could sound attractive. But time and again, we've seen nations that practice communism take advantage of that power in a bad way. We don't want to get too deep into communism today because that could be a long discussion. But that's the long and short of it. What we need to know is that both on the battlefield and at home, conditions were not good. In fact, they were bad. And that's one of the reasons why Germany eventually agrees to stop fighting, and it's one of the reasons why Russia leaves the war. And that secret alliance between Russia and Germany is very important. President Wilson, as we'll read, will come to address that in his 14 points and in the negotiations to bring peace back to Europe. That's an important thing. Don't forget that secret treaty between Russia and Germany. So, like I said at the beginning, that the war, World War One, starts in a way, because of how alliances work. And in a way, it ends because of how alliances work. Alliances are very important in this discussion. Think about that, and we'll talk later.